Hey, I'm Ron Rodos from keyboardimprov.com, and I've noticed that one thing that holds a lot of aspiring pianists back from really becoming great improvisers is something that I call practice paralysis. And practice paralysis is when you feel so overwhelmed by all the material out there, whether it's books on your shelf on how to play jazz or internet information that you don't know is right or wrong, or just the feeling that you've got to learn everything and it just becomes overwhelming and you become emotionally paralyzed. You just don't learn anything. You just don't sit down and practice because you don't know where to start and it feels overwhelming. When I was a teenager, this didn't exist. I caught the very end of that era in the late 70s, early 80s, when there was only a couple of jazz books. There weren't really any step-by-step methods on how to learn improvisation. I played out of the real book just using seventh chords for like 2 years, and I jammed with my friends. I learned, probably 20 or 30 songs, and I had a great time. Just having so much fun exploring the music, and yeah, I'm gonna get this. I practiced for hours, and then I remember someone showed me a flat 9 chord. I said, "Oh, that's what that is." So then I just played flat 9s all the time. Played it on every song, and I just loved every minute of it. But now there's so much out there, we have to find ways to recapture that excitement about learning each new thing without getting this what I call practice paralysis, which is so common. I hear it all the time. People come to me for lessons, and I say, "What's the problem?" They're like, "Well, I just feel overwhelmed. I've got all these jazz books on my shelf, and I just stare at them, or just don't know where to start with all the information on the internet." So this is what we're going to do. So we're going to look at jazz because it's the most prevalent there, but it also relates to rock, pop, classical, improv, whatever. Even learning classical music too, in some sense, because there's so much out there. You can't learn every Chopin etude at once, right? So let's say we take jazz. Okay, what do you have to learn to become a great jazz pianist? Well, there's so much, right? There's a whole repertoire of tunes, hundreds of songs. There's chord voicings. There's rootless chord voicings. There's extensions. There's alterations. There's scales. There's modes. There's walking bass lines. There's diminished scales. There's motivic development. I mean, the list goes on and on. But the good news is you don't have to learn them all at once. I didn't. Nobody does. Bud Powell, Chick Corea, they didn't learn all this stuff at once. They learned things by picking it up here and there. So we have to get back into that mindset. So we're going to start with one thing, and let's just pick modes. Even with modes, there's 12, let me do the math. Okay, 12 different notes, 7 notes on each. Okay, so 84 modes. That's too much to learn at once, and you don't have to. You're not going to use all those modes. And the point is to learn one really well and get interested in it, whatever you're doing, whether it was scales, chords, or even a tune, right? We're picking modes. So now let's just pick one mode randomly. E Dorian. Okay, let's start with the E Dorian mode. We're just going to get interested in this. So even though this has what we would sometimes consider the key signature of D major, we're not in D major anymore. It's definitely E minor. It's an E minor scale. So we're in the key of E minor, and it happens to have 2 sharps. And so the first thing we can do is forget about every other mode and get into this and really hear where the half steps are. Because as we know, most major scales, like the D major scale, consists of a whole step here, and then another whole step, and then between the 1, 2, 3, 4, third and fourth notes, it's a half step. And that's very different once we sensitize ourselves to hearing that. It's very different than a whole step. And then between the 7th and 8th notes, it's the other half step. You could say it's between do, re, mi, and fa, and so la, ti, and do as well. Now, if we're in E minor or E Dorian, the half steps are in a different place. There's a whole step here between the 1st and 2nd notes, and this is how you can practice it, right? And then you listen to this whole step between the 2nd and 3rd notes. Hear how it's so different from these whole steps, because the whole steps have one in between. It's a bigger interval. And once we really get into that, the scale or the mode comes alive in a different way, and we can just improvise simple melodies, listening to where those half steps are and how they're different. And then we can even add a chord. We can add an E minor 7th chord here, maybe. Okay, and we'll improvise just out of tempo. Again, hearing the sound of these whole steps now in relation to this chord. And the half steps, the half steps. Do that for a half hour, right? And now let's try it as a jazz ballad. Just let's see. I'll just sort of use some free rhythms, but I'll be at this tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do it with straight, about 8th notes too. And then after a while I can do, okay, I'll use it to really get into this slow swing feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after I really get good at that and comfortable, and I'm getting to know this E Dorian mode really well, I can do it at a medium tempo. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then let's see, straight 8th notes at that medium tempo. That's what these 60s rock groups like the Doors would do. They would use these modes and with a rock beat. And improvise on one mode for a while. They did like the Dorian modes, so that's very classic rock. And then, okay, well maybe at a really fast jazz tempo, you know, practice your fast tempos without trying to do a whole song, but just with this mode. Like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're using it as a chance to play at a fast tempo. And you can try it in different styles. You can try waltzes. Are you keeping a steady beat? How could you work on that? You know, all these things with just that one mode. And an amazing thing has happened. We got so interested in playing just that one mode that we forgot about everything else, forgot about all the other stuff. That's the amazing thing. We got beyond practice paralysis. That's how you do it. You just pick that one thing, like in this case, the D Dorian mode, the E Dorian mode, and you just focus on these things and you get so interested. You could do the same thing with rootless voicings. Instead of trying to learn the A, B voicings all at once, just learn one. And then say, okay, well, let me just hear that, get interested in that, and then where can that go? Or maybe I just take that mode and I move it up by half steps, or whatever it is. Just get so into that one thing that your curiosity becomes alive, and your interest, you tap into your innate interest and fascination with these. It's like raw materials. It's like working with clay or something, an artist. Okay, what can I do? What can I do? That's how you get beyond practice paralysis in whatever style of music you're into. So you can follow this again with the modes and try everything I did, or you can apply it to anything else you're interested in learning. But that's the way to do it. Good luck. It's like always being a beginner. It's great. Have fun with your learning at every step of the way, and good luck.